All right. Christine, you're a fresh graduate. What did you read at uni, and how long have you been fresh off the books and out in the workspace?
I did. My degree was in software engineering.
Hmm.
I did my degree in software engineering, and I just been fresh off in a sense that ever since last February, I have been graduated, and I just received my official certificate this month.
Wow. Okay. So literally you graduated just as the pandemic was hitting.
Yes, correct. You're right.
So your sort of like experience of jumping into the world of workspace has been sort of a year that's been completely disrupted.
You're right.
Right.
Definitely not the nice time to
No.
experience it, but
No. Some would have said, "Oh, yay, I don't have to get a job for a year because I've got a really legit excuse." Was that the case for you?
no, definitely not because you gotta survive.
Absolutely.
Apart from the pandemic, you still gotta survive. So with
Okay.
my goals in mind, I have to earn an income. I
Ab-
have to.
Okay. So, you're an executive at an IT company now, the job that you have, your first job after, being out of uni. And we understand that you interned at this company first before securing a full-time job there. What made you decide to stay on after the internship ended?
You're right. I actually did internship in this company last September till December. So when I got a full-time job offer by the CEO, and been working for 4 months right now as a full-time.
Hmm.
So why did I accept this job was because I actually had a final year semester after my intern. So I did had a final year project to do. So and I have classes only on Fridays. So that was the term they told me a term where you can attend your class as normal on Friday, but apart from that you can come and work with us. And to me, apart from the salary, it was the learning process to me that is very much important. So why not? So which is why I agreed to do a full-time job in this current company that I'm working.
Okay, so that was based off sort of how flexible they seem to be with you kind of finishing your studies and working for them as well.
You're right.
So it was the security, I guess, of a full-time job at a seemingly decent place. Yes.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So you were talking about the salary that you were promised. So you were promised a certain salary for joining. Is that right?
Um, I wasn't promised. We didn't talk about salary, to be honest. We didn't.
Okay.
We
So at
weren't
that point,
promised.
so at that point of saying yes, you hadn't sort of discussed salary, or you didn't know, because I thought you'd mentioned earlier that it was about the salary.
Oh, we I they didn't promise me a certain salary. They did not. But we
Okay.
did talk about salary in a sense where what are your expected salary in a sense, but it wasn't like a promise. They didn't promise that they're gonna agree to my expected salary. To be honest, yes.
Okay. Let's go back to talking about the job itself for a second. So, we hear that you've got actually multiple roles. So you joined this job for a specific role, I suppose, and now you've got multiple roles. What are they?
Yes, you're right. It's a very interesting story, to be honest. I was hired as a business development, and then later I was required to do a job as a PA, personal assistant for the CEO.
Right.
And currently, I'm also working on HR in a sense that I
Right.
call up people and say, "Are you interested?" I book some appointments for them if they would like to give it a try. And also, like the funny thing was, I was told that I was gonna be a business development, which is what I agreed upon.
Hmm.
And then later months, I was introduced to people as the boss PA, which to me it was kind of a disrespectful thing, and it was kind of like a bad experience, I would say.
Yeah, well, yes, because that wasn't the role you were hired from. Not that there's anything wrong with being a PA, it's just that you were
Yes,
hired to be in business development, which is different.
yes, you're right. If the boss would have called me like, "Hey, do you mind becoming my PA at the same time doing it?" I would definitely say yes. I would definitely say yes. But for the fact that that happened, so it's definitely upsetting, you
Okay.
know. But
So
yeah.
was it made clear to you at the time when you agreed to take on this position that you'd have to juggle, multiple roles at all?
No.
No.
not
But it,
at all.
okay, but in retrospect, you said that if they'd said to you, okay, we need you in business development and to be the PA, you would have said yes then.
Yes, completely. Because let me be transparent. I'm a student. I just got off a fresh grad, and I would like to experience and learn a lot of things. And I don't mind juggling a lot of things, because it's not just the salary part that I am negotiating, but also the role and the experience that I want and I want to get from a certain company. You know.
Right. So with you having to do sort of bits of HR in terms of hiring and I guess the vetting of, people like yourself who are just coming into the company, is that something that's interesting to you as well as having part of your purview of your job spec?
Well, to be honest, I don't exactly enjoy doing HR work, but if that is what required, I'm a person who never says no when they give me task or job. I'm not sure it's a problem, it's an issue, or it's a good thing or a bad thing, but but I just do what I'm supposed to do.
Right. Well, I suppose you could look at it at the sense that, sometimes our biggest strengths are also our biggest hindrances or weaknesses as well. So it's how they're
True.
applied, right? Okay.
Yes.
So let's go back to talking about salary and wages. So you'd said initially that they had, the conversation of what you'd like, you're expecting sort of salaries conversation had taken place, but they hadn't come back to you with what the salary wage was for that particular role. Um, but in terms of wages and talking about wages whilst you were studying, going back in time, I'm sure you were told about entry salaries and what to expect. What has been your reality, and are you able to survive on this?
Well, I would say it's very upsetting, and it's um to go through the real world. It's not what you think it is, and it's definitely, I would say, the current salary is just sufficient for me, because I have in plans to do masters
Hmm.
in years to come, and with that I need a certain amount to save up, which currently I cannot, because I'm using all my salary for my student debt, and for just to give some pocket money for my parents and things like that.
Okay. So at uni, when you were studying, what were the numbers being talked about then versus the reality that you're facing now?
So during at my uni, they would tell Q8 plus.
Hmm.
Q8 would be the minimum,
Right.
and from there onwards, yes.
So you kind of left uni with your degree thinking, yes, I've got my degree and I can start at 2.8 plus and I've got all these plans in store for this kind of budget, right? What's
True.
the reality? I mean, what are you getting, if you don't mind us asking?
It's lesser than 2.8, but
By a large amount or by a little bit?
by a large amount, quite
Are we
quite a
talking a
large amount.
50% cut here to what you thought you'd be getting or
No, around 30%, I would say.
okay, enough to put a dent in your plans, right? So I guess the question is, are you able to survive on this for now?
At the moment, yes, because I'm just imagine I'm living with my parents currently, so I don't have a house to pay. But I would like to own a house, buy a house few years down the road.
Mhm.
But at the moment, now that I'm living with my parents, I don't have a cost to pay for my house. Unlike like a lot of people out there, fresh grad, that has to pay for their house living, for their car, and for the renting. It's insane. And this is just not about me, but it's about a lot of people out there that's going through similar situation as I am.
Mm. So you say also that you're sort of trying to help support your parents as well in this whole picture, and you got your masters that you've seemingly put on hold because of the situation. Have you had to put your masters on hold?
Yes, definitely. I was intended to get my master's, to start my master's end of this year, but due to the salary and due to the saving money to be saved up, I have pushed it next end of next year.
Mm. So at the moment, you're kind of covering your basics, but because you don't have to pay rent at the moment, that's been a saving grace for you. But, how dire is the situation for you financially right now as this sort of fresh grad who is eager to learn? is happy to take on whatever role she wants, but is just not getting paid what she needs to in order to live. Just paint the
You're
picture
right.
for
This
us.
you're right. This is something that has to be talked about. We fresh grads, I think we are more open to learning new things. But when we request a certain salary, they disagree because we have no skills. So what I am just trying to request is we just want salary that could match with the rise of cost of living. That's all we are requesting for.
So what are you not able to do then? I mean, like if you could paint a picture for us in terms of what your struggle is now because of your financial situation. How bad is your struggle? Like what's going on there?
I, to be honest, it would means a lot for me to take up my masters. I really want to learn. Apart from that, and I have to push further and further away on my plans to get a master's. And also, a few years down the road, I would like to own a house. My parents are getting older, so with that being said, I want to be independent. So I want to own a house. And with the current salary that I'm receiving, I would say that it's difficult.
Hmm. I mean, some could argue that for a lot of people, paying for a master's is something that they have to wait until midlife. That's why there's a lot of mature students doing it because that's just the way it's been for a majority of people. You could even argue, right? So going back to sort of how you're struggling now day to day, I wonder how this, salary degradation or decline is impacting you as an individual, as a young person who's just starting out in the world. Um, how difficult is it? I mean, can you afford to buy groceries and food? I mean, can you afford to pay for your petrol? Do you have a car even? Can you just explain to us like this sort of paint that picture of what it's really like basically having to live on this salary that you're paying
Mhm.
with the cost of living right now.
So yeah, I'm a person who normally drop down my expenses. So as I was jotting down, and the place that I'm working at, the the price of foods are way expensive. So in order for me myself that to actually reduce my expenses, I have decided to cut down on my lunch. So that is a sacrifice that I have to do. And apart from that, that I would pay is the parking fees. The parking fees are very, very expensive in the area that I'm working at. So
Hmm.
it's not included in the agreement, which is the working agreement. It's not included into my salary. So which is another disadvantage for me.
Hmm.
So which means that I have to go there extra early in order to park outside because it's way cheaper. That is another sacrifice that I have to do. So I'll be the first one to reach at the office. I'll be the first one to open the door. So I have the access key because I need to get a parking so that I'm able to pay less than parking inside the building, which costs me 3 times more.
Hmm. And when you say you cut back on lunch, does that mean you just don't eat lunch or?
You're right, because it's very expensive. And I've realized that the two most things that I spend on is the food and also my parking, apart from the toll and the fuel. But these are the two I felt um, that I spend most on.
Mm. And do you end up bringing, I mean, food for home? Like, do you just not eat? I mean, what's that scenario like?
Oh, at times I would bring food from home. At times I
Mm.
would just skip. Yes, it's just all part of the living, I guess.
Right. And of
Mm.
course, you're stuck at your parents for now because of the situation. But at the end of the month, I mean, do you have any money outside of all your essential expenses to save? Is that even possible
At the moment, I would say I have just enough salary
to cover
to.
what you need?
Yes, you're right.
Okay. And what about the student loans? I mean, like how many years do you think, given the current situation, is it going to take you to pay them all off?
It's gonna, it's definitely gonna take another additional few more years.
Okay. additional for a few more years to what you expected, or
Yes, to what I expected.
so what did you expect before, and then how has it been delayed now?
I definitely would like to pay up my student debts for the next less than 5 years. That
So,
was my initial plan, initial goal.
mhm.
But as the current salary that I'm receiving, um, I would say probably be more than 5 years, more than what I expect it to be.
Like 6, like 7, like 10, like
Could
what's
be
your
it could
projection?
be it could be 7,
Okay.
could be 8, could be even longer than that, I would say.
Okay. So you've tried expressing your grievances to your employers and negotiating a higher salary. What kind of response did you receive?
Oh, they're definitely not happy with what I expressed, because their point of view is that I have probably less skilled than a lot of people there. So what makes me to demand for a higher salary?
Hmm. And what
So
was
that
your response to that?
to me is I it's very hard, because unless you go through what we go through, you be in my shoes, then you will understand. But their point of view is totally different. They're like, you're a fresh grad, and my reaction to that was, it was very upsetting. But there's nothing that I can do when they are unhappy about my point of view of things,
Mm.
and with me being outspoken, and they definitely not happy about it.
When you say outspoken, what do you mean by that? I mean, does that mean you are talking to other people in the company about this,
Yes,
or okay?
yes, definitely. And it's not just me, but it's a lot of people in the company that's going